السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وصحبه واتباع الحماة للدين القويم Ramadan Kareem. As the month of Ramadan has begun, it is a great favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given us the great treasures and bounties of Ramadan, and for us to explore from His beloved words, Al-Quran, of all the benefits that we can avail ourselves and benefit from and earn from the great treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amongst the great favors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, in the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 183, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykum as-siyam, kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum, la'allakum tattaqun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of the first quality in this ayat, in this verse, about taqwa. That the objective of siyam and fasting is for us to attain taqwa. And taqwa is one of the guiding principles in our lives by which we submit to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We recognize Allah in our life. This recognition is important for us to become conscious of the way that Allah wants a believer to put their life in perspective. And if we consider the great value of Quran and the aspect of Quran in our lives, what is the objective of Allah commanding us with fasting, and relate this to taqwa? The objective of this is to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In this blessed month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this the month of Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about Quran in His beloved book in the very beginning chapter, and on the very revelation of this Quran, it all surrounds the concept and the aspect of a believer connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His words. And at the very first revelation the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam got was to read. Iqra, read in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iqra bismi rabbika, read in the name of your Lord. Rabbika alladhi. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, read in the name of your Lord. What is the other aspect of this ayat? It goes to show that this verse, which is connected to the very beginning of the chapters of the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that this Quran is hudal lil-muttaqeen, that is a guidance for whom? The people who have taqwa. So the striving for every believer is to get taqwa in their lives. And what do we achieve out of taqwa? The concept of the awareness of what Allah wants from us. Where do we look for this? We look for these words, verses, and chapters of the Holy Quran that Allah has given various nasihat and advice to us on the lines of obedience to our Creator. In this relationship, a person looks at the month of Ramadan that Allah has given to us. Subhanallah, in it, Allah has placed this quality of taqwa. Amongst the various actions that have great merit in this month is fasting. And fasting has the quality of a person attaining taqwa or piety, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because a person becomes aware that his deeds, his words, his deeds, his actions, every single thing connects to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, we are trying to please Allah and earn His reward in every action that we do. In this objective, one must strive for taqwa, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this Quran as a means and an objective of guiding us to earn closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen, religion, or way of life for all of us. Ramadan is the ideal example that Allah has set with such beautiful deeds, such beautiful actions, that a person who would adopt them in their life definitely will gain the maximum rewards and benefit of taqwa. This is the training ground, the ground in which it is a means of purifying the heart, as the Quran is a medicine for the heart, it is a cure for the heart, it is a means of purifying our heart, it is a means of bringing consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to our heart, and therefore we must become more inclined towards reaching out to this Quran in this blessed month of Ramadan, so that we gain the reward and benefit of taqwa. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite mercy, while placing fasting, the objective of this fasting is for that person who has taqwa, who have consciousness, they also fast and they also become conscious of the duty to their Lord. So fasting is an example and a similitude of a person who is in constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are fasting only for the pleasure of Allah, and they will not do deeds or actions that will throw away the benefits and the rewards of fasting, which is the goal to attain taqwa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite mercy has placed this special favor for us to go towards the direction of taqwa. And as we continue in this month of Ramadan, we will look at some of these beautiful verses of the Holy Quran to gain that blessing and implement such actions in our life, so that the pleasure of Allah will be within our hearts, and the constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will soften our hearts, and the constant connection of our ibadat and worship and good deeds will gain us the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah accept this first day of our fasting, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our good deeds. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.